During the Battle of Cape Sarych in November of 1914, the Turkish Yavuz Sultan Selim battlecruiser engaged a superior Russian fleet while sailing through mine-infested waters. To avoid getting sunk and be able to head back to Constantinople, Yavuz had to risk it and confront the Russians head-on. It was before the beginning of World War I that Germany began developing a new type of battlecruiser to match the hegemony of the British Royal Navy. One of them was SMS Goeben, a Moltke-class battlecruiser that quickly proved her worth. Transferred to the Ottoman Navy in 1914 and baptized as Yavuz Sultan Selim, the ship single-handedly kept the entire Russian and British ships at bay during the war. Usually outnumbered, outgunned, and outmanned, Yavuz always found a way to escape from her hunters while leaving behind a trail of destruction. Still, getting away in one piece during that fateful day in the Black Sea was not going to be easy, but the seasoned German crew aboard Yavuz and their Ottoman allies were willing to make the ultimate sacrifice to keep fighting another day. Moltke-class battlecruisers. In the early 20th century, the young Prussian Empire was slowly becoming the most affluent, advanced, and prosperous empire within Europe. However, the French, Austrians, Russians, and mostly the British did not see the new competitor with good eyes, as the Germans would sooner or later become a threat to the UK's hegemony. During the years before the outbreak of World War I, the Kaiserliche Marine, or German Imperial Navy, got entangled in an arms race with the British Royal Navy to dispute the supremacy of the sea. Then, in a May 1907 conference, the Imperial Navy Office discussed a new type of battlecruiser that was expected to begin development the following year. The program's objective was to increase the caliber of the primary batteries and armor in the existing SMS Fondatan battlecruiser design. This ship had a main battery of 28 centimeters, and the plan was to increase it to 30.5. A budget of 44 million marks guaranteed the project's possibilities. Still, Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz argued that it was preferable to increase the number of guns from 8 to 10 with the same caliber. And based on data from the construction department of the Navy, the 28-centimeter guns had more than enough range to engage similar battleships. In addition, the new battlecruiser had to be built with increased armor and a top speed of 45 kilometers per hour. The project was approved for 2 Moltke-class battlecruisers, SMS Moltke and SMS Goeben, which were assigned the contract names Cruiser G and Cruiser H. During development, many changes were made to the citadel, ammunition stores, boiler systems, armor thickness, and other areas, resulting in an overall weight increase. Still, Blohm & Voss Shipbuilding Company delivered as expected. The ship that carried the name of legendary Prussian Field Marshal Helmut von Moltke was laid down in December of 1908 and launched in April of 1910. As for Cruiser H, baptized after the Franco-Prussian War veteran General August Karl von Goeben, she was laid down in August of 1909 and launched in March of 1911. SMS Goeben. SMS Goeben was manned by 1,050 officers and sailors, and during wartime, the crew size could be increased to 1,350. Both Moltke-class battlecruisers were 186.6 meters long and 29.4 meters wide, with a beam of 30.33 meters and a draft of 9.19 meters. They also displaced 25,400 tons under maximum load and were easy to handle but not highly maneuverable. SMS Goeben was powered by 4-shaft Parsons turbines. Her propulsion system provided over 51,000 shaft horsepower, but she barely exceeded the minimum value set by the program, reaching a maximum top speed of 47.2 kilometers per hour. Strangely enough, SMS Moltke achieved a top speed of 52.6 kilometers per hour during her trials. It was also noted that SMS Goeben could reach up to 7,630 kilometers at a speed of 26 kilometers per hour, while her maximum operational capacity was 12,000 kilometers at a rate of 10 knots. The ship was designed to carry 1,000 tons of coal, but up to 3,000 tons could be stored if adequately accommodated. Meanwhile, her Krupp cemented steel belt armor ranged from 280mm to 76mm thick, and deck armor protection ranged from 25 to 76mm wide. As for weaponry, Goeben's main armament consisted of a main battery of 10 28cm SKL-50 guns. They were distributed in 5 twin-gun turrets, with 2 of them placed amidships in an echelon formation, 2 in a super-firing pair aft, and the last turret was placed forward. The gun's mountings used electric pumps to drive hydraulic elevation gear, and their training was powered by electric generators. If SMS Goeben had to flee from the enemy, the ship could fire 8 guns from the aft turrets. On the other hand, if the ship was on the hunt, she could fire 6 guns from the forward turrets. Secondary armament comprised 12 15cm SK-L-45 guns placed in the ship's central section. And for anti-aircraft defense, another 12 8.8cm SK-L-45 guns were distributed in the bow, stern, and conning tower. Additionally, SMS Goeben carried 4 500mm submerged torpedo tubes to increase her firepower. The Mediterranean Division. At the outbreak of the First Balkan War, SMS Goeben was sent to the Mediterranean as part of the so-called Mediterranean Division. Her objective was to demonstrate German sea power in the region. Goeben and the light cruiser Breslau left Kiel in November of 1912 and visited Venice, Naples, and Constantinople under Vice Admiral Wilhelm Souchon. When the Second Balkan War broke out in June of 1913, the ships continued patrolling the region and visiting several ports. But as World War I finally broke out in Europe, after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria in Sarajevo, Souchon knew it was a matter of time before Germany went to war against France and the British Empire. Then, on August 3, 1914, SMS Goeben and Breslau bombarded Philippeville and Bonn, subsequently heading for Constantinople, but first steaming to Italy to gather more coal. Admiral Souchon had secret orders to convince the neutral Ottoman Empire to join the war on Germany's side. However, the British, who were still not at war with Germany, were aware and dispatched a group of 12 ships under Admiral Sir Berkeley Milne to search and shadow the 2 German vessels. A game of cat and mouse ensued. As the outnumbered German vessels reached Messina and resupplied, they decided to leave at midnight on August 5th to evade the British ships tracking them. HMS Gloucester then sighted SMS Goeben and Breslau and tried to block their exit, but the German ships quickly steamed east. The Admiralty then ordered Gloucester to close in and fire at the Germans to slow their escape, to which Breslau retaliated, but no ships were damaged. 4 armored cruisers of the Royal Navy were subsequently dispatched to attack and sink the 2 German vessels with torpedoes, but Souchon outsmarted them by heading towards the Adriatic. By August 10th, Goebbels and Breslau arrived in Turkish waters and sighted the coast of Gallipoli, forcing the British to head back, as they did not dare break into Ottoman waters. Still, the fight for the Mediterranean was just beginning. Yavuz Sultan Selim and Midilli. After reminding the Turks that Britain had broken a contract with them after the purchase of 2 battleships and their plans for taking over some of their territories, they were convinced that sooner or later the war would come to their doorstep. Then, on September 23, 1914, the Ottomans purchased the 2 German battlecruisers, and the ownership was transferred to the Ottoman Navy. The Kaiser allowed the Turks to retain the German crews to train the novice Turkish crewmen in the art of war, and Souchon himself accepted to command the Turkish fleet. Goeben was then renamed Yavuz Sultan Selim after one of the empire's most iconic sultans, while Breslau was baptized as Midilli after the capital of the Greek island of Lesbos, taken from the Ottomans during the First Balkan War. Now sailing under the Turkish flag, Yavuz, Midilli, and other Turkish light cruisers set sail for Russian waters to go to war against the Tsar. War with Russia. On October 29th, the Turkish fleet bombarded Sebastopol, putting destroyer Lieutenant Pushin out of commission while also sinking a mine layer and 2 steamers. Yavuz's guns wreaked significant havoc, destroying many of the port's facilities and military defenses. On the following day, Russia declared war on the Ottoman Empire and dispatched the Black Seas Fleet to attack Turkish ports and any enemy ship sighted in the region. Then, after bombing Trebizond on November 18th, Yavuz and Midilli faced the Russian Black Sea Fleet at the Battle of Cape Sarych. Russia's capital ship, Evstafi, confronted Yavuz in a one-on-one fight, with one hit penetrating Yavuz's secondary guns and taking the lives of 12 men. Meanwhile, Evstafi was damaged on her middle funnel and lost her fire control radio. Yavuz then landed 4 more hits before deciding to break contact with the enemy after 15 minutes of combat. Evstafi remained afloat, but lost 50 men. During December of 1914, Yavuz and Midilli continued providing support for troop transport while bombing Batum and several other areas. The ships were then struck by mines in the Bosphorus and went through repairs from January to May of 1915, while also providing support and escort missions to other Turkish light cruisers. On April 25th, both ships set sail for Gallipoli to bombard the Anzac forces the United Kingdom had landed, but were interrupted by an attack from the dreadnought Queen Elizabeth, from which they managed to escape. Then, throughout July, Yavuz hunted down Russian ships in the Bosphorus and helped escort Turkish coal transports, even surviving a torpedo attack from the Russian submarine to Yulin. Yavuz had another dangerous encounter in early 1916 when she faced the Russian ship Imperatrica Ekaterina. Still, neither ship scored any hits, and they broke action. Coal shortages eventually prevented Yavuz and Midilli from continuing with more operations, and they remained in port until December of 1917, when the armistice between Russia and Turkey was signed and the coal transport resumed. Post-war service. On January 20th, 1918, both ships participated in the Battle of Imbros under the command of Vice Admiral Rubor Pashvich, who replaced Shushan after being assigned to the 4th Battleship Squadron of the High Seas Fleet. Yavuz and Midilli sank the monitors Raglan and M28, but Midilli was eventually sunk by several mines. While retreating to the Dardanelles, Yavuz was hunted down by the British forces. Outnumbered once again, she miraculously survived after being towed off to Constantinople by the German pre-dreadnought battleship Turgut Reis. Then, on March 30th, Yavuz escorted the Ottoman Armistice Commission to Odessa after the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk was signed. When the war formally ended, the ship was to be handed over to the Royal Navy, but with the outbreak of the Turkish War of Independence, this never happened. Yavuz would remain in service with the Ottoman Navy until December of 1950. Then, 13 years later, the Turks offered the ship to Western Germany as a museum ship, but the offer was rejected. HMS Goeben, or Yavuz, was finally scrapped in 1976, becoming one of the last standing dreadnought ships. The legendary German ships that fought for the Ottoman Empire will always be remembered for the havoc they created wherever they went, with even Prime Minister Winston Churchill writing that Yavuz brought, quote, more slaughter, more misery, and more ruin than has ever before been borne within the compass of a ship. Thank you for watching our video. Please like and subscribe to our Dark Documentaries channels to find more exciting historical content. And let us know in the comments below what you think of the legendary Moltke-class battlecruisers. Stay tuned for more.